Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Minecraft Disney World. This week we're going to be taking a look at quite an iconic ride. Even if you're not a fan of Disney, you've heard of it. It is the famous Space Mountain. And here we are in the Magic Kingdom in Tomorrowland at Space Mountain on the MC Magic server. And we're going to go ride through it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Space Mountain. So let's hop in through here, through the queue area. So Space Mountain was a ride opened in January of 1975. So it's a pretty old ride. In fact, it's considered the oldest operating roller coaster in the state of Florida. So it was the first, the oldest, and it has a history that goes back a little bit further than that. In fact, Walt Disney himself sort of came up with the idea of what would become Space Mountain back in 1964. He wanted to build this roller coaster in Disneyland when they recreated Tomorrowland. Not recreated, but sort of refurbished it. And it was going to be an indoor ride. It was going to be called Space Voyage. He had John Hench, the very, very talented artist, work on this concept. And it was going to be an indoor roller coaster, very much like this, with special effects and projections. But at the time, it just wasn't feasible in terms of technology. So it was never really made. It was sort of shelved. And then it was only revisited back after the Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World was so popular. And so they sort of built it there. And the one in the Magic Kingdom, oh look, there's Tigger, was the one that was first placed. And ever since then, they've been putting Space Mountains and all the other Disneys. So I'm sort of walking through the queue here. The way the queue's laid out, and I will say that out of all the rides here on the MC Magic server, this one's probably the least true to the original, and I think the reason for that, and if you've seen my tour videos, is because right now they're actually working on a 1-to-1 scale version of it. So while this one might not be as accurate as some of the other rides, it's because they're working on a more accurate version. But you'd go in through this star tunnel, and you would have these windows to different galaxies. And originally, for the most part of the ride's history, they were just sort of still images that you walk through. But in about April, I want to say, of 2009, they shut down the ride for a pretty long renovation project. It was within the year. They opened it up back in November. It cost them around $12 million. Part of what they did was they put in an interactive queue. So now when you go through, what you see here is a bunch of interactive games. And if you've been on Soarin', you kind of know what I'm talking about. They're just sort of, there are a few there where you're using your body, but there are a lot where you're using controls, and they're all space-related games. And it's just sort of stuff that Disney threw in there as an attempt to keep you occupied while waiting on some of the long lines. So they also did a couple other things with it. Well, how do I talk about it without explaining the ride? Let's explain the ride a little bit. So it's an indoor roller coaster. It's 300 feet in diameter, and the roller coaster's all in the dark with special effects. You can't really see anything here, and that's the point. It used to be set up so that when you walked into the queue here, you could look up and see the stars and see all of the effects, and you could see the roller coaster going. And the problem with that was basically all the light from the queue area would bleed into the roller coaster, and it would sort of dampen the effects a little bit. So they closed it off, added a ceiling. There's a lot more neon lights. It's sort of a retro-futuristic vibe for their sci-fi. Let me put on my HUD here for a second so we can hop in and give it a ride. Oh, it almost left without me. And so you hop in this roller coaster. It's one seat per row, and it's like 3 rows per rocket ship. And you go through these wormholes, and it's going to launch me up. Hopefully it'll launch me up. And you go in, and here's the roller coaster. So this was sort of Disney World's answer to having a Matterhorn. The Matterhorn is a roller coaster in Disneyland that's also very popular and very iconic, but they decided it wouldn't fit with the theme of Fantasyland and Walt Disney World, so rather than going with that, they decided to go with a roller coaster in Future World, and that's when they revisited this Space Voyage idea, and it later became known as Space Mountain. It's 2 tracks that are actually symmetrical, all for 10 feet. One of them's 10 feet longer, but they're more or less symmetrical tracks So you could go on one or the other, and they all weave within each other. And these little redstone torches are all meant to represent the stars, and now they have projections of stars and planets, and it's a short little fun roller coaster. Let's break that up there. Now the exit area, this isn't what it actually looks like in the real Disney World. Like most rides in Disney World, it ends in a different area than when you pick up. And it's actually got a really cool post-show queue area. It's not really a queue area, but it's got a post-show area. And it was originally the theme of the post-show area, and I guess this is what it's meant to represent, is you'd be going up this ramp slash escalator, and it would show you these different rooms. And for the years that the ride was sponsored by RCA, the post-show is focused around what life in the future would be like. And those so there would be like different scenes of futuristic life. And then eventually, and I believe that was from 94 to 2004, it became about life. It became about shipping packages through space, because the new sponsors were FedEx. And since 2004, it actually hasn't been sponsored by anybody. Now Disney just owns it on its own, and they're just sort of various scenes. And I have nothing to show here for it, because the scenes don't actually exist in here. But they throw a few references to a beloved old ride called Horizons. In fact, one of the tags on one of the pieces of luggage that gets sent throughout space has it's either a tag or a sticker for Mesa Verde, which is one of the 3 colonies that you can visit in Horizons, the old ride from Epcot, which I'll probably talk about in one episode. And you also see a robot in one of the scenes that's the butler from Horizons. And then it opens you out, and you're in this sort of typical post-show area with, things you can buy, shirts, and it's a souvenir shop that's got a few arcade games in it. It's pretty fun. And one other really cool aspect about the ride is that it's not the only ride that you need to ride to see the ride. By that I mean, if you ride the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, also in Tomorrowland, you actually go into the Space Mountain building, and you can actually see the track, and you can see people going around in Space Mountain. And there's actually a point where the Space Mountain roller coaster carts cross paths with the Tomorrowland Transit Authority carts. So if you're really good with your timing, you could see, people on the ride going up for the big plunge. So there you have it. The very famous, the iconic, the unforgettable Space Mountain. I hope you enjoyed this video. Every week we're going to be taking a look at a new area or ride at the Walt Disney World MC Magic recreation, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you all next week. Bye.